Hello everyone. Last night I woke up to this horrible sound. I'm not sure it was a sound, it was more like something resonating in the depths of my mind, and it sounded like 5 million Mishima players cooming at the speed of light while crying tears of pure electricity. Naturally, the first thing I did was to open YouTube, and I realized that boys be reacting, and we finally have a gameplay trailer for Tekken 8. Extremely exciting, of course. I had to watch it once and then go to work, but I'm back now, and by now you've probably watched a million people react to and comment on this trailer, but I still wanted to go through it and talk about the things I think we can learn about how Tekken 8 is going to play mechanically. I think we have some really interesting hints throughout this trailer. First of all, maybe I should give my impressions on the trailer after watching it once. I had two main takeaways. The first one was that I think it's funny how Tekken is so obviously completely bankrupt as a franchise in terms of narrative. They basically only tell one story, and this confrontation here between Kazuya and Jin looks exactly the same as Kazuya and Heihachi at the end of Tekken 7. That was supposed to be the end of the Mishima saga and this, sort of turning of the page, but now we get a complete rehash of things we've seen a million times before. And I was like, at least they've switched the magma for tornadoes, but then as the two characters fight, the magma starts spewing in the exact same way that it did in the previous game. And so I don't think we should ever expect Tekken to be, or even attempt to be, about something, at least in universe. But luckily, most of us who really care about the game care about playing it and love it for other things. The other main takeaway I had from the trailer was that Tekken 8, as far as I can tell, is going to graphically be the most impressive fighting game ever made, at least from a technical standpoint. I think this looks absolutely incredible. I haven't seen anything like it in the genre so far. Now, they haven't done anything especially interesting with the art style. Street Fighter 6 looks amazing. It also looks very modern, but it's gone back to this sort of retro 80s graffiti-based and inspired visual style, whereas Tekken, as you can tell by the image that we're looking at right now, basically looks like it always has, except for the fact that it looks a lot better. And technically, in terms of animation, dynamic camera, and just the graphics themselves, it looks incredibly impressive. But it does look like just an evolution of the same style that we've seen in previous games. It looks very safe in that sense. And it doesn't get any points for creativity, but it does look, absolutely incredible. Let's talk about some of the things that happen in this trailer. And the first thing that I picked up on happens when we see this axe kick from Kazuya here. It's kind of interesting. If you look at Jin, you can tell that he's actually racing his arms and going into a block animation before the opponent's attack has landed. And this is not something that happens in Tekken right now. If you go and slow down an attack being blocked in Tekken 7, the character receiving the attack will stand in their default animation and then snap into a block animation when the attack connects. But Jin is actually preemptively blocking here, almost as if there was a block button, kind of like in Soul Calibur. I don't think that's the case. I think this is the character model automatically reacting to an incoming move, but it's kind of interesting to see the character models and knowing and changing depending on what attack is sort of coming in, right? It's very dynamic in that sense. But maybe this block animation that Jin is doing has something to do with what happens next, because the axe kick from Kazuya ends up creating a massive amount of pushback. And it's something that we see several times throughout the trailer, moves having this incredible amount of pushback. And it made me really interested. It made me start to think about this new kind of shitty mechanic that we had implemented into Tekken 7 recently. You might remember that we have new tactics in Tekken 7, and they have to do with some moves creating this massive amount of pushback. It allows you to create some guaranteed mix-up situations at the wall, but in the open, it's kind of this huge pushback, sometimes on hit, sometimes on block, and it's actually made some tools weaker as mix-up tools because you're simply not close enough to the opponent to capitalize on your frame advantage anymore. We know that Namco liked to experiment with new ideas for their next game in a previous game because One time they created a shitty Tekken game called Tekken Revolution, sort of to experiment with new things in the interim between Tekken Tag 2 and Tekken 7. They started to experiment with fireball characters, and they invented Elisa for the first time. Kind of funny that they went through all that trouble for a character that ultimately nobody played, but you know, we had Akuma and all the rest of it. I think that was the great experiment to start to see what a 2D character implemented into Tekken would feel or look like, and how it would be balanced. Ultimately, they weren't balanced, but there you go. So is new tactics in Tekken 7 some sort of way of experimenting with a new pushback thing that is happening with attacks on block here? It's difficult to say. Maybe they've just added a massive amount of pushback on some of the moves from Jin and Kazuya. Maybe that's going to be more common in this game, but it's massive movement in 2D space, and I've seen some people comment on this trailer and saying that it's kind of worrying how it shows a lot of stuff happening in 2D space, but it doesn't show anything. It doesn't have a single indication that Tekken is still a 3D game. I think it still is, but we know for a fact that players, and especially advanced players, have a very different perspective on Tekken and its 3D movement compared to the developers at Namco, and they've kind of eroded the idea of Tekken being deeply 3D with Tekken 7, and they've tweeted and made some comments that sort of make people worried and make them think that maybe Namco aren't as excited about the idea of Tekken being 3D as many of the players are. So is the new blocking thing and the massive pushback thing some sort of evolution on the new tactics? Who knows? It could also be, if you look at Tekken 7, one of the main design philosophies of this game or that game, and one of the main things that Namco are obviously obsessing about as they're developing modern Tekken, is that they don't want the franchise to be intimidating to people. They want it to be accessible to as many people as possible. And if you have this massive pushback on block and that resets you to neutral, it's kind of an automatic way for somebody to escape pressure, which might feel good if you're new to the game and you don't understand frame data yet. You can just do a bit of blocking, and then you don't have to worry about anything because you're going to reset to neutral. But maybe these moves keep on slamming us into walls and creating these mix-up situations compared to, new tactics in Tekken 7. So it is really interesting, because the moves and the pushback that we've seen here doesn't look at all like what we've seen in Tekken 7. The next thing I want to have a look at here, and this, by the way, if you're looking at this axe kick from Kazuya here, it gets blocked by Jin with the preemptive block, and then this is the amount of pushback that is created after that move on block. The next thing we see, which I thought was kind of weird as well, is Jin is doing a move right here, and Kazuya dodges it by kind of leaning back. It doesn't look like a back dash. It looks like a lean back, kind of like what Steve or Josie can do right now, and then he's able to punish really hard. The Korean backdash cancel is like a staple of movement mechanics in Tekken right now. People who haven't learned it yet tend to not like it because it's hard to learn. People who have learned it like it because it lends depth to the game, and it's something that they can rely on to display their mastery of their game and their experience. And it's also fun to do successfully when you're good at it, right? I personally love the Korean backdash cancel and wanted to stick around. But here, I think they almost deliberately do not show what Kazuya is doing by creating this cinematic zoom in with the camera, and we see him lean back. We don't get to see him actually Korean cancel. Is this a new mechanic? Is it something that they did specifically for this trailer? I think many of these cinematic angles that they show are actually trailer specific. They're more like these cutscenes that flow into gameplay in Tekken 7 than what the actual gameplay is going to look like. If we have this many cinematic angles and camera this dynamic when we're playing Tekken 8, it's going to be a problem because it's all over the place. It's a little bit too epic and a little bit too much like watching a movie. And I think even though dynamic angles are cool, we want to know what we're doing and we want to focus on where we are on the stage and things like that. So this is really interesting. It could be a new mechanic. It could be something that is just happening in this cinematic. It could be Namco's new idea of what dodging attacks by moving backwards should be. Is the Korean backdash cancel still alive? Is it still going to be a thing? When you do one really well and something whiffs, is there going to be this sort of slowdown and zoom? It's kind of interesting, but I'm really sort of concerned / interested in knowing what's going to be happening with specifically backwards movement, but also sidestepping in this new game. The next thing we learn is that spin is still a thing in Tekken 8 because we see Kazuya launch and then spin the opponent. It looks extremely cinematic. I've seen some people say that they think this is a rage art or some sort of pre-created sequence for Kazuya. To me, it looked like him counter-hitting, with his homing move and doing a perfect electric the way he can do right now. People think that's really poggers. They would probably want to know that it's still possible. And then it looks to me like he just spins Jin in his combo the same way you would spin an opponent in Tekken 7 right now. I personally like spin. I think Bound was kind of cool. I think spin is kind of cool as well, and I don't mind it sticking around for future entries, but we know for a fact now, pretty much I guess, that this soft reset in the middle of the combo, allowing you to extend the combo, is going to exist in the new game. Some people might be sad about that because combos being very long has been a bit of an issue with Tekken 7. I made a video one time where I tried to come up with creative fun combos for characters that don't utilize spin to show that that could actually be a pretty good take on the combo system, and it could rein in the damage and the combo carry and the time that combos take right now. But there you go. You get launched by geese. Sometimes you're watching combos for up to 3 minutes. I've told this story before, but I promise you that it is true. I once, when I was still living in Japan, swung into a geese who was parrying. I realized what was happening and I got up, went to my bathroom, pissed, washed my hands, came back, sat down and grabbed my controller before the geese player was done comboing me, which is not great. I think that's problematic combo length. But these combos that they show in trailers are usually not optimal. They're just something basic, and then we're going to invent the real combos when we have our hands on the game. And the final thing that I think was sort of fun and interesting mechanically, was that we saw what I'm pretty sure was a super from Jin right here. He turns into Devil Jin. One thing I've said for a while is I would prefer if Jin and Devil Jin were sort of merged into one really interesting character. It looks like something like that might be happening here. That might be the direction they go with the character in the new game. But he does something that looks a lot like a super to me, or a rage art. It's not the same rage art that either of the characters had in the past. If this means that they're going to try and come up with new good-looking rage arts or supers for all characters, it's a strong indication that the roster is going to be smaller this time around, because that's a lot of work, especially when they obviously ran out of creativity and ideas coming up with rage arts for the characters in Tekken 7, because many of them just punch you into the air, charge up, and then hit you away with something, whether it's Fang or Paul or any of these really bad ones, right? But there is going to be some sort of super mechanic apparently. This one looks really cool. I mean, it's very anime. I bet the weebs are cooming. There's a single black wing. And all the rest of it, but it's kind of short. It looks good. It seems a little bit faster than some of the rage arts in 7, and I kind of like it. And then when Devil Jin is grabbing the feather at the end, I feel pretty sure that is actually just a win animation, something that's going to happen when Jin's won a round and he's saying something and it says, you win. I don't think that's part of the actual super. Maybe it's a special ending that happens when you end with this super or something like that. So in conclusion, massive pushback on block looks interesting. Changes to movement. I mean, we don't know anything yet. We don't know if the Korean backdash cancel is still in there. We don't even know if we can still sidestep in this game. But it would really shock me if they tried to make this game fully 2D or even almost. We know that spin is still going to be a thing in combos, and we're still going to have some sort of cinematic super mechanic similar to or identical to rage arts. Maybe they don't have this armor and they go through things. Maybe you actually do them when you're already launching an opponent and you use them as like a massive combo ender. That would make sense to me looking at this trailer. I think that might be the direction that they're going in. But Tekken 8 looks fantastic. and it's going to be so interesting when we start getting trailers for real cool, interesting characters that I might want to play. Jin and Kazuya, Electrics and Hell Sweeps, we knew they were going to show up. I think they're boring, a little bit too easy. I prefer playing hard characters like, Katarina, and hitting with her hop kick is much more difficult and much more complex than doing something like an Electric Wind God Fist, but there you go. But just learning more about the game, I also will say that it's very easy at this stage to just jump on the hype pole and start rotating. But I think Tekken 7 was a controversial game for many good reasons, and they didn't have to do with the game not looking fantastic or having great cinematics or new mechanics or anything like that. All the problems with Tekken 7 came down to the marketing of that game, and we don't know how this new game, Tekken 8, will be marketed or what will be happening with that side of it. Whether or not we're going to be charged for frame data, whether or not DLC characters are going to be properly balanced, whether or not the developers will continue to talk down to and insult their audience, and then occasionally uploading an image celebrating the fact that they've sold another 1 million copies. So while it is very easy to get excited about this, I am still very cautious. I still haven't forgotten the sins of the past, and I'm going to continue to be a bit of a cynical bitch going forward. But, things do change, mostly for the worse, but sometimes for the better. And I'm hoping for great things. But man, when the fucking Miguel trailer drops for this game and he looks this good, or, Zafina or Katarina or Gigas or Bob or Eliza or any of these characters that I really love and will get hype over, it's going to be amazing. I can't wait. And I celebrate the excitement of you Mishima boys out there. What a glorious day. Let me know if I missed something in the trailer, something that you picked up on. Thank you so much for watching this, and I'll see you guys again very soon.